I can't think of anything funny to say about advent calendars. Hello and welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it's Wednesday, it's cocktail day. In this case, we're doing Advent Calendar Cocktail Day. So one of the local groups that I'm in did a non-bourbon whiskey advent calendar this holiday season. And so I tried them. We did a half an advent calendar, so it was 12 days. And it was very interesting. There was a lot of unique stuff there. Non-bourbon covers a lot of territory. So what I did is I recorded all of my reactions to each one of these individual pours. I'm going to go ahead and put those in here. You'll see what each individual one was, what I thought of it, and then at the end we'll come back here, talk about which ones I liked, which ones I didn't like, and just sort of close out. So let's do that. Try the first one. So here we've got sample number 1, which for some reason is not showing up on camera at all. There's a 1 there, trust me. We've got our Glencairn. And we're going to go ahead and put that in our glass. It's kind of an interesting initial palate. Yeah, I think this is a single malt. I was under the impression most of these were going to be single malts. It didn't catch me right off the bat. Because when you look at non-bourbon whiskey, you know, single malts, whether they be Irish or Scottish, are going to be kind of your priority. On odor or on the nose alone, I'm going to guess maybe an Irish whiskey. I feel a little less qualified on these. I'm not a big single malt drinker, and so I'm kind of just going to, tell you what I get. So it's got kind of the light, what is that? Maybe popcorn. I don't know. It kind of smells like you're like an Irish whiskey or maybe a Speyside single malt, something like that. It's got a good nose on it. It's not overly strong. Let's give it a taste. See what it's like on the palate. Oh wow, so the palate does not match the nose at all to me. I get like peanut butter almost on the palate. It's interesting because again on the nose, this kind of has the nose of what I would call a fairly typical Speyside single malt or maybe an Irish whiskey, something like that, which is also going to be a single malt typically. Yeah, I get peanut butter, maybe bread. It's a really interesting palate. It's got a pretty decent finish too. It sticks around a little bit. It's not gone right away. I'm assuming this isn't, well, you always say these things when you're doing blind tastings, and you could be completely wrong about all these. But my initial response is this is not super young. I know what I put into the pot, and I'm wondering if basically, based on what I'm getting off of this and based it not sort of tasting like a traditional single malt, if this is what I submitted. And by the way, as you're watching this video, I will put right now, and I'll tell you what it is I'm drinking, and you can laugh at whether or not I was right or wrong. On first palate, though, I think this might have been what I submitted. What I submitted. Well, it'll tell you whether or not I was right or not. Yeah, interesting palate. Your single malts come off a little sunnier, whereas this has got sort of more of like a nutty kind of bready kind of palate. It's not unpleasant at all. I like that. if you're a single malt drinker, I would recommend grabbing whatever this was. I don't know yet. We'll find out. I would recommend grabbing this and sort of challenging yourself to something a little bit different. I can't guarantee you, like, if you're a single malt guy, I can't guarantee you'll like this because it is a little different. But it will definitely have a familiar nose anyway. All right, so this is day one. There's one of these. We only did 12 samplings, so we're gonna have one of these every other day. I'm not gonna post these every other day. I'm just gonna, we're just gonna push through, and sometime towards the end of the year, I'll edit all these together, and you could see if I was right on these or if I was crazy. And again, as not a single malt drinker, be prepared for me to be wrong about many, many, many of these. So. Cheers, and we'll see you either in 2 days or in 9 seconds. And we're back with day 2 of our little non-bourbon whiskey advent calendar. We're here with our number 2, and we'll see if it shows up on camera. It does not. That's all right. I promise you it says 2. We're going to toss this into our eager little Glencairn glass there. Let's see what we got. It's got a real nice subtle nose. This definitely is not screaming single malt to me on the nose, at least. I get sweetness. It's got, I think, a little bit sweeter nose than a single malt. And by the way, you guys kind of laugh at me when it says this idiot doesn't know this is actually a single malt in the little thing below, but we can only say what we smell and what we taste. I guarantee you it's something kind of note, especially people getting new into drinking whiskey or whatever, and you think that everyone around you knows everything about whiskey and that they taste something and they know exactly what it is right off the bat. It's not the case. I think whiskey sampling is heavily dependent on mood. It depends on what you've eaten that day. It depends on a lot of things. So if you do a tasting and you get something incredibly wrong, or you find that you like something you didn't like before, or you don't like something you thought you liked, don't be surprised. It happens all the time. Yeah, maybe there's a little barley in there. I don't know. Let's give it a try. It's interesting. So the whiskey from the other day, I was convinced it was a single malt on the nose, and then based on the palate, I changed my mind. This is exactly the opposite. Based on the nose, I was convinced it wasn't a single malt. As soon as I try it, I'm convinced that it is. Yeah, it's funny. The nose and the palate don't match up on this one particularly either. It's a real nice malty kind of palate, though. It's not overly aggressive. It's a little subtle, actually. If I was to guess on the region, I don't know. I don't think this is Speyside. It's definitely not an Isle of Scots. There's no smoke here. There's no peat. There's no brine, so I don't think this is an island or a Campbelltown or anything like that. And I guess I'd say maybe a Highland whiskey. Yeah, I like this. It's a real, just kind of fairly subtle, little malty whiskey. You kind of your typical single malt notes on there. Again, I'm not great at doing tasting notes for bourbons, and I drank a lot of bourbons, and so if I'm doing tasting notes for a single malt Scotch or an Irish whiskey, depending on where this is from, I'm definitely not going to be doing great at doing tasting notes in there. So I apologize that I'm not going to tell you about the tannins and the marzipan or whatever else a professional whiskey taster can taste on this. To me, this just tastes like a very, very competent single malt whiskey. It's not. I wouldn't say it's a particularly old whiskey, but it's definitely not a young one either. Probably something in the range of 10 to 12 year single malt. It would be my sort of offhand guess. It's just good. It's real. It's kind of a. I don't know. It reminds there's certain things out there you buy and they're not extraordinary in any particular way. It's a Toyota Camry, and it sounds almost insulting, but it's very much not. It's not extraordinary, but it's just solid. It's just if you want to sit down and have a nice whiskey that is going to do the job, isn't going to be. It's not offensive. It's just. I feel like it's been aged well. There's a little oak around the outsides, but not a ton of oak. It's not too sweet. Fairly dry. It's just a good single malt. Yeah, it's good. I approve. Oh, that being said, I will be back here in 2 days, or for you, 18 seconds. And we are back with day 3 of the non-bourbon whiskey advent calendar. We're here with sample number 3, which, of course, that's not going to show up, but, it says 3. God damn it. All right. Let's dump this into our Glencairn. Let's see what we think. This is interesting. I can't place the nose at all. Very not single malt. Very I can't even place it. It's very, very, very different. We've got a guest. You guys can't see him. The puppy's here. It almost smells a little. It almost smells a little musty, almost. So I recently sampled a rice whiskey. And this kind of smells like that, actually, a little bit. Let's see what we think of that. Okay, yeah, this definitely isn't a single malt. The only thing I've tasted recently that sort of compared to this was a rice whiskey. I think it was from Japan, if I'm not mistaken. It does taste very kind of. There are certain Eagle Rare releases that have that kind of musty kind of character to them, and this kind of reminds me of that a little bit. I mean, doesn't taste like Eagle Rare at all, but just that kind of character. I can't. It always, the phrase that I always come up with is like a little swampy, and that sounds negative, but it's not. It's not really a negative. I don't think it's bad. It's definitely very different. But it's very definitely not a single malt. If this turns out to be a single malt and I was wrong, then I will eat my hat. But this does not taste like a. I don't think there's any barley going into the making of this, because this does not taste like it at all. It's got maybe a little bit of anise, not much, like just on the very finish, a little bit of anise. So kind of think. Like vegetal kind of a flavor. There's definitely some oak and some vanilla. Yeah. There's vanilla there on the finish. On this one, again, not getting a lot of caramel. But but definitely vanilla. A fair amount of vanilla, actually. The nose and the palate are a little bit different, but they're not shockingly different like they were on the first two. The first two were the palate and the nose were very different. Here they're different, but not, incredibly so. Man, I can't quite figure out what box to put this in. It is, like I said, I tasted a rice whiskey, an aged rice whiskey that had a very similar flavor profile to this. So if I was just to toss off a random guess, I would say this is an aged rice whiskey. But that's the only thing I have. And again, so I know the one thing that I submitted to this particular advent calendar, and this could be it, because the thing that I submitted is kind of different. And this definitely tastes different. Again, I'm bad at giving flavor profiles for especially single malts, but this basically has nothing in common with the flavor profile or the nose of a single malt. So whereas the other two, I thought there was definitely some crossover there, and those could be single malts. I could have been wrong on those. I would be very, very surprised if this was. I think there's a little bit of chocolate in there as well. Not like added, but just kind of a bitter chocolate. There's some bitterness in there. This is a really interesting one. It's again. I talk about the rice whiskey I had recently, and so I'm kind of, and I don't know if that's what this is. This could be something different, obviously, but I was very on the fence about it because there's things in there that I like and there's things that I kind of don't like. I like the I like the differentness. The vanilla is a very kind of generic vanilla. It's not a very sweet vanilla. This is definitely not a sweet whiskey. I don't think it's very old. It seems like there is some maturation there, but like for example, if you've ever had a very young bourbon, you know what that kind of grain character is. So it's the first thing you can sort of spot in a whiskey to say, okay, that's a little bit younger. And whatever the grain was used in this, I think you can still taste that grain. So I would say this is probably not a very old whiskey, but it is very interesting. I think the age is probably the only thing that's sort of a negative for me. I think if this was a little older, I might like it a little bit more. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with kind of a light vanilla, maybe a little bitter chocolate. There's some oak there, but the oak is just very much around the outsides. This is not particularly oaky whiskey. A little bit mustiness or kind of swampiness, like a vegetation kind of a flavor or smell. Yeah, it's interesting. I would I enjoy this, but I probably wouldn't be a daily drinker for me, because it is just it's kind of a strange whiskey. I'm interested. I'll be interested to see, and you guys can see right here, right now, what it was, and you can see. Watch out for puppies, and you can see what it actually is, and we will see what we have in 2 days. We're back on day 4. We have here not very good luck on these showing up on camera, and we're going to go ahead and continue that trend, but it does, trust me. Well, you kind of, sort of, not really. It's number 4, trust me. Alrighty. We're using our little mini Glencairns today. Alrighty. Okay, this smells pretty young. There's a lot of grain notes. I'm assuming most of these are going to be single malts, although the instructions were just not bourbon, so we definitely could have a rye in here, although I don't think that's what this is. Seems like it might be kind of hot, too, for what it is. It's a single malt, definitely. Although it tastes a little peppery on the palate. I still think this is probably a single malt. It's a little younger single malt. Again, a lot of grain notes. Kind of this one, the nose and the palate match up, I think, pretty well. Yeah, it's strange to be getting pepper on that, because I don't think this is a rye, and I don't. Well, you never know. Maybe this is a. Maybe there's some rye in there. Tastes very peppery. The pepper kind of gives way at the end towards more typically grainy, malty kind of note. I don't like the finish a lot. The initial palate actually I think is pretty nice. Again, pepper, maybe some light kind of baking spices. Light though. And then it kind of gives way. The finish is just sort of a younger malt kind of a flavor. I don't dislike this. The finish is kind of the weak spot for me. The initial palate I think is pretty good. I'm going to be interested to see what this is, because the finish again very much makes me think of single malt, but the initial palate I get some pepper, and typically that pepper flavor you're going to get is going to be a rye, which it could be a rye, although the finish doesn't taste like a rye at all. I think maybe this is just a single malt that has maybe some rye characteristics to it. What else? A little bready. There's some breadiness to it. Yeah, I'm sort of split on this one. It's like it really does feel like a rye on the start and a single malt on the finish. I don't know of any whiskeys that use just rye and then have a significant amount of malted barley to be able to taste on the palate. So maybe this is something different. I don't know. I think probably this is a single malt and it's just got a palate that's a little bit unique. I'll be interested to see what this is. This is I haven't really been giving ratings on these. I think this is interesting. It seems a little different than some of the other things we've had. Although we had a lot of different things, so far. But it's kind of a different cutoff, or a definite cutoff between the palate and the finish. So. Yeah, still the same thing. I think this is good. It's interesting. Probably not going to be my favorite, but definitely something I'd try again. And that brings us to the end of day number 4. And we're back with day 5. Once again, the attempt to get this to actually show on camera, and it sort of does. Okay, so we got our Glencairn. We've got our sample. Let's pour that out. And the one thing, I haven't talked a lot about the color on these. This one strikes me right off the bat, though. That is very, very light. That is an extremely light color. A lot of grain. A lot of grain. Once again, all these, I at least was under the impression that most of these were going to be single malts. So whenever I nose, I'm thinking, okay, is this a single malt? Is this not a single malt? Because most of them should be. This one, real light grain notes, a little bit of sweetness. I was wondering if this could be a corn whiskey. It's just a real light palate. There's not a ton going on here. There's, like I said, grain, a little bit of sweetness, and that's about it on the nose. Yeah, that's a real young single malt. I think. Very grainy. Very little barrel influence here. You're not getting very much in the way of vanillas, caramels, any of that barrel influence. I mean, it obviously it has been aged, but this is a real young one, I think. Yeah, so part of me that almost thinks maybe this is a corn whiskey. One thing you get a lot with corn whiskeys, if you've ever tried mellow corn, kind of has this. Of course, mellow corn is actually an older whiskey. It's like a 6-year whiskey, I think. With corn whiskeys, you get a lot of sweetness, but not a lot of complexity and not a lot of other flavors. That's why in bourbons, you typically want another, what they call a flavor grain, because corn by itself it brings a lot of good sweetness, and it's not too bad at creating alcohol, but it doesn't bring a lot of other flavors. It's just kind of sweet. Yeah, I think, you know what, I'm going to go out on a limb. This doesn't taste, I said single malt. I think I was wrong about that. Yeah, I think maybe this is a corn whiskey. Again, sweet, a little young, and not a real complex palate. Just kind of sweetness, youth. And there's different kinds of sweetness too. When you have a bourbon, the reason bourbon is kind of as sweet as it is because you've got the sweetness from the corn, and corn brings a lot of sweetness. Plus, you have the sweetness from the barrel. And this tastes to me primarily like the grain sweetness, the sweetness from the corn. I don't think this is much from the barrel. So, it's good. It's not bad. It's just not much. It's sort of one of those things that to me doesn't really have a ton of character. It's just kind of this would be great to mix into cocktails, I think. Probably not an old fashioned. I think this would probably be too sweet for an old fashioned. But if you were mixing like a Boulevardier, maybe a Manhattan, I would say you wouldn't want this in a cocktail that's featuring just the whiskey as the primary flavor, because I don't think it's going to hold up. I mean, the one bad thing about this in a Boulevardier is it's not going to hold up against the Campari very well. The Campari is just going to be, Campari is going to destroy most bourbons in that cocktail. I mean, it's sort of the point of the cocktail is that it's, that the bitter ingredients or the bitterness kind of overtakes the bourbon. But in this case, I think there's just not a strong character, particularly. Not bad. I mean, nothing. It's not a bad whiskey at all. But I think it's just kind of there. Not bad, but doesn't do a ton for me. So hopefully this wasn't the one that I put in. All right. I will see you guys. And we are back for day 6 in our unending quest to see if we can get the camera to focus on the number. And I think that's the best one we got so far. That's not bad. I can live with that. Looks like a G. It's a 6. It's fine. Alrighty. And I'm going to try to pay more attention to the color, too. With the last one, I thought the color was sort of more striking because it was a very light color. And so I'm going to try to do that with all of them now. So let's pour and see what we got. All right. So color-wise, we're light. We're not as light as we were on the last one. But it is fairly light. Let's get our nose in here and see what we think. Ooh, I like the nose in this. It's a younger single one. I think this is a peat. I smell some smoke there. Oh yeah, there's some smoke there. It makes me think because I know, I know kind of what the cost floor and ceiling were here, and so I'm trying to think what peated Scotch, if this is a peated Scotch, which it certainly smells like it is, what you could get at this price point. But as a lover of peated Scotches, I'm very excited. That's good. Okay, so typically with your peated Scotch, your Islay Scotches, you're going to get there's kind of two flavors that are kind of intermingled. And with different Scotches, they kind of combine together in different ways. So like if you have like a Laphroaig, you're going to get more of that sort of medicinal, like a little bit of medicinal along with the smoke. And the medicinal, I mean, doesn't outweigh the smoke, because let's face it, in these peated Scotch, the smoke is everywhere. And this is very much the case, a lot of smoke. I'm not getting much in the way of that medicinal quality. I think this may be a little younger too, but I like it. The smoke is very front and center, but it almost smells, or it almost has more of the flavor of like a... let me get another... Yeah, this reminds me of something. I'm going to go out on a limb and call this one, although I don't think it's what I'm thinking it is, because I think that would be a little more expensive than we sort of put down for this. But I almost wonder if this is a Del Bach single malt, because it's definitely smoked. But like as I was saying with the peated Scotches, when you have that peat smoke has got kind of a medicinal, almost kind of like mossy kind of... It's a difficult flavor to kind of describe, whereas this seems to me to have more of kind of like a smokehouse kind of smoke, smoke. So it's not like mossy. It's a little drier. I like this one a lot. So again, I think it's a little young, although to be honest, I don't think the youth is really hurting it very much on this one. It's just, man, this one just makes you want to go and get some smoked meats. It really does. It feels like you're just next to a smokehouse having a single malt. I like this actually quite a bit. I think this may be my favorite. Again, I've been ranking these or giving them letter grades because, I'm kind of doing these split apart, and I think it's unfair to give ratings when you're splitting a bunch of pours apart over a period of time. But I think this might be my favorite from the ones we've had so far. It's just really good. It just really is it feels very homey. Like I almost want to say like a hickory smoke. I mean, I don't know if it's hickory. It could be mesquite smoke. Yeah, I like this a lot. So I'm going to go out on a limb and call this as a Del Bach single malt, although I think I'm probably wrong about that. But I just, I'll call it and see if I hit it, then I'll look great, and everybody will assume that I must have cheated. But I did not. It is definitely a single malt. It is definitely smoked. I don't think it's peated, though. I think it is smoked with something else, because it doesn't taste like that peat smoke. It tastes kind of more... like a drier smoke. It's really good. I like this a lot. Whoever picked this one has my compliments. This is a whiskey after my own heart. Yeah, I like that one a lot. It's a real good one. So it gets a I don't know, whatever letter grade that's higher than the letter grades I would have given the other ones. All right, so I will see you all. Right, and we are back for day number 7. And one finally actually showed up correctly. My compliments to the labeler. All right, as usual, we are going to go ahead and dump this in our little tasting glass. Fairly light color. Not a bunch of legs on it. Let's get our nose in there. Real light nose. Not quite sure what this is. I'm getting maybe a little nuttiness. But it's real mild. Very, very mild. Let's see if we get more on the palate than we do on the nose. Okay, there's some light oak on there. This is a young whiskey. I'm going to guess this was maybe aged in a small barrel. One of the hallmarks of small barrel aging is you'll start to get that oak, the oak tannins and the oak flavors in your whiskey, but you won't necessarily get that maturity. So there's still a fair amount of grain on this one. It's not unpleasant, but there's definitely still some grain on it, and we're getting a little bit of oak, but again, not a lot of maturity on it. Yeah, just a real light oak, a little grainy. One other thing I've noticed in some of these younger whiskeys is just a little bit of, I don't know exactly what you call it, maybe a little bit of bitterness just at the very, very back of the palate, kind of just on the finish. I'm not sure what this is, to be honest. It's light. It's very light. I don't think it's a corn whiskey. A lot of these are probably single malt, so it would be a good bet to say this is single malt. It doesn't taste sort of unmalty, whatever that means. Yeah, I mean, it literally, I'm picking up some light grain notes, some oak around the outside. And that's about it. A little bit of sweetness, not too much sweetness. I think most of the sweetness is coming from the little bit of the barrel, but I would be surprised if this is more than a year or two old. Definitely surprised if it's more than 2 years old. It's not bad. I don't dislike it. It's not, again, I don't think it's been aged enough to get a ton of character to it. But it's there. It's a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of grain, a little bit of oak. I'd probably put this in a cocktail. This probably wouldn't do too bad in a Boulevardier, which, if you watch the channel, then you'll know Boulevardier is a favorite cocktail of mine. And you can kind of play around with whiskeys in that cocktail, but because the Campari in the cocktail is so strong that it almost doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not going to say, a lot of people that are in cocktails are going to say, yes, it obviously matters. It does matter to some degree. But in a Boulevardier, what you're mainly getting from the bourbon is kind of the back of the palate, sweetness and a little bit of oak. The front end is just being taken over by the Campari. And then you also get the sweetness from the sweet vermouth. But yeah, not particularly, not a ton of character either way, to be honest. It's fine. It's a light, sort of younger-ish, probably single malt. I'm not getting corn on this, so I don't think it's a corn whiskey. But of course, then watch you'll be looking below here and see corn whiskey. We'll see though. Again, not bad, not unpleasant, but probably wouldn't be the first thing I'd reach for. And if this was on my shelf, it would probably be more of a cocktail pour. But that's just my thoughts. All right, we will see you all in a second. New day, new whiskey. We are up to number 8. You can kind of see that. We'll call that good. So I'm going to take number 8, toss that into our tasting glass like normal. first thing that strikes me on this has got a darker color than a lot of things we've tasted so far. So this could mean it's, you know, better aged. Again, with these single malts, you can add things. They could have added coloration. But just first right off the bat, yeah, a little bit darker color. Not a ton of legs on it, which would suggest there's a little bit of legs on there. Let's get our nose in there. Okay, this is again, my guess here, this is a Speyside, I think. Speyside single malt. Just real traditional sort of, you know, you think about your you know, your Macallans, your Glenfiddichs, your you know, that type of thing. Just a real traditional single malt nose, probably, I don't know, based on the nose, you know, probably something in the vicinity of maybe 10 years old. You know, could be wildly off on that, and that's just the nose. That's interesting. With the nose, I basically thought I had this figured as being a, you know, like a 10-year-old single malt Scotch. It's definitely a single malt. There's a little more going on there. I don't know if this was finished or because so the nose, you kind of get that lighter sort of springier, you know, your Highland or a Speyside single malt. But on the palate, you don't. The palate, you get a little bit more. I almost wonder if this was maybe aged in virgin oak. Maybe I feel like there's a lot more barrel influence in this than you would sort of expect from a single malt. I feel like this is all finish. There's not a ton of flavors going on right on the initial palate. I like the nose a lot, and I like the finish quite a bit too. The initial palate, though, it's a little thin there, but it sticks around. So this is definitely, again, if I'm going out on a limb, I'm going to say this is probably the oldest product that we've tasted so far here. There's some oak there, but there's also maturity too. So I mean, it's possible this was aged in a smaller barrel, but I don't think so. I think this was probably a 53-gallon barrel. Again, probably a Scotch, although this could be an Irish whiskey too. I'm not familiar enough with Irish whiskey to sit here and really tell you that the distinct flavor profile that comes off. I mean, Irish whiskey is typically triple distilled, but I am definitely not connoisseur enough to tell you the difference in flavor between a triple and double distilled single malt whiskey. No, it's just real pleasant. Again, that thinness at the front end isn't really necessarily a ding on it because it really kind of develops over a period of time. This is definitely something. This is definitely a nice little sipping whiskey. I know I sort of raved about number 6, and number 6 I think is probably still my number 1 because it was so kind of bizarre and unique. This is probably my second favorite that we've had. It's just real nice. It's very. It's a little mild, but in kind of a more not mild as in weak, more mild as in it's subtle. It kind of develops, over time, and it leaves you with a real nice finish. You don't get that kind of young grain note in the back of your throat after you've had it. No, this is a real good one. I like this a lot, actually. Again, if I'm guessing on this, I'm gonna guess a single malt, maybe 10 years. Although the developments taste a little bit different, but I don't know. It could be that I've been tasting other things that have sort of pushed me in that direction. But yeah, I like this quite a bit. This is a real nice one. We're back, day 9. Kind of see that a little bit. All right. Whoa. I mentioned color on the last one, but this is real dark. It's got a little bit of legs on it. The nose is young. The nose strikes me as very young. A lot of grain notes there. That's one of the things when you're tasting whiskeys. If you taste, or if you smell a lot of oak, or you see a lot of color like you do on this one, but you're still smelling grains, that's the first sign that this was probably aged in smaller barrels. Again, I mentioned before the idea that you, with smaller barrels, you will get oak sort of quickly, but you won't get that maturity. And so and by the way, when I say maturity, I sort of mean the grain notes seeping out and sort of the more mature flavors seeping in, your caramels, things like that. And instead you get more like a char kind of a flavor. So. Yeah, that's got a pretty young nose on it. It's a big flavor. There's a lot of oak. There's a lot of caramel. There's a lot of, I don't know, maybe chocolate, maybe a little bit of chocolate. I know I'm always useless as far as tasting notes, but I kind of do the best I can. It is young, but it's not as grainy as I thought it was going to be. The palate, or the nose, is much grainier than the palate. Finish is actually not bad as well. The finish sticks around longer than you sort of think. Yeah, kind of chocolatey, a little chocolatey. This is probably some kind, and there's some smoke there too. I think this might be like a smoked or some kind of smoked single malt. It's not peated. It's definitely not peat. There are some people that use chocolate barley, and I'm almost wondering if that's what this is. It is younger, or on the younger side, but I don't find it to be unpleasant at all. Again, I didn't love the nose too much. The nose was giving me a lot of grains, but the actual palate, I'm not getting that sort of grain flavor. So this one's a little bit of a puzzle. Yeah, chocolate, some smokiness, light smoke. Number 6, we were talking about like being like you're standing next to a meat smoker. This isn't that. It's real light smoke notes. So, yeah, if I was to guess, I would think this is a single malt with some kind of a chocolate barley, a chocolate malted barley maybe. This is pretty good. I like this. It's younger, but it's very sippable. I'd kind of be interested to see what you do with this in a cocktail. I think kind of play with that chocolate sort of, with those chocolatey notes. Maybe combine it with a little bit of sweetness and perhaps like an orange liqueur, like a triple sec or a Grand Marnier, or something like that. No, I like that. That's very, very sippable. Again, it goes to show you, in throughout doing these tastings, how the nose and the palate can sometimes be kind of incongruous. And you'll smell something on the palate and then you taste it and it's very different. This is very different. The palate and the nose are very different. I do think it is young. The finish is nice, but it's also not going to stick around. It's not sticking around for a real long time either. So I do think it's a little on the young side, but I'm not bothered by it, and I don't find it to be unpleasant at all. Yeah, this is a good one. I'm not sure. I'm trying to start to rank these in my head a little bit, and I'm not going to do a full-on ranking of all these because I've tasted them so far apart, and I feel like it'd be kind of unfair. But the ones that I've sort of put as my top, I still think that number 6 is my number 1, which isn't confusing at all. My number 6 is my favorite. This versus the one from our number 8 from the other day. These are very close. It's funny, they're close to me as far as which one I like the best, but they're very, very different as far as the flavor. The one from yesterday tastes like a very traditional single malt with maybe a little more wood influence and kind of a subtle flavor, whereas this is very bold, and I think probably a younger single malt, but very, very bold flavors. Probably younger, I would guess, but again, some kind of a chocolate malted barley or something. Again, it could be totally off on this, but that's sort of what I'm getting on it. So yeah, I like this one a lot. This is a good one. Again, very sippable. We are back for day number 10, and I think you can actually read that. What do you know? All right. So we've got our tasting glass. We've got our cap that stuck in our... I'll find out later. All right, let's go ahead and pour our sample. All right, so the first thing that hits me off of this is that is very, very light in color. Not a ton of legs. Now, light in color isn't necessarily a bad thing. For a lot of scotches, for example, which this could be one possibly, since it's aged in used whiskey barrels, it's not getting a ton of color out of the whiskey out of the barrel. So you can have some whiskeys that are aged well but still don't have a lot of color. So color is definitely not your only guide when it comes to age. In converse, you can also have whiskeys that are very, very dark and not very old, but they've just added caramel color to them. Single malt scotches are allowed to add a certain degree of color, caramel coloring. Yeah, it smells to me like a pretty mainline scotch. Again, I think just based on the nose, maybe a Highland or a Speyside again, possibly Lowland. I don't really know scotches well enough to really, grab region by region. I mean, certain of the areas, if you're going to know an Isla right away. Campbelltown typically has a certain flavor profile. The other ones I'm not as good at telling the difference between. Although, to be honest, I probably can't tell much of a difference between, single malt scotches and a lot of Irish whiskeys too. So, not my main flavor profile. All right, let's go ahead and give it a taste. That's a good one. Again, I think probably I'm going to go with a single malt scotch. Again, out on a limb, I'll say Speyside or Highland, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to bet any amount of money on that. It's nice and dry. It's got a good finish on it. It's not grainy. So I think this has probably been aged pretty well. I would say this is probably at least a 10-year-old whiskey. As far as the flavor profile, again, I just get that Speyside Scotch. I know I'm not the best on tasting notes, and I never claim to be. No, it's just really good, solid sipping Scotch, or Irish whiskey possibly. Back in there on the nose. maybe some fruit notes on there, like maybe pear, possibly. Maybe a little honey. That's about the best I can pull out of it. I feel bad not having more to say about this one because I think it's pretty good. It's a real nice, it seems to me anyway, like a real nice mainline Scotch. So we'll see, look below and see if I was right or not. It's definitely a single malt of some type. It's possible it's an American single malt, although given that this tastes like it has some age on it, I doubt it's an American single malt. But it's possible, I suppose. So yeah, I'm going probably either a Speyside or a Highland Scotch, possibly an Irish whiskey, and a very good sipping one to boot. So if you like something like that, then you should probably get this one and try it out. Back with our penultimate whiskey tasting for this Advent calendar, number 11. We're doing, like I said, 12 on this one, so this is our second to last. Get our tasting glass here and everything. So let's go ahead and pour that in and see what we got. As with most whiskeys, the first thing you see is the color. It's the first thing you see is the first thing you see. This one is definitely darker than we had for the other day. Sort of more like kind of a golden or amber color, where the other one was a lot more of a pale, like a pale gold or yeah, I guess pale gold. I don't know if that's even a thing, but a much lighter in color. This is a little bit darker, but not what I would call a dark whiskey. This is interesting. I don't get a real strong nose on it. It does smell a little bit hot. I think this is a little higher proof than some of the other stuff we've had. Be able to tell more when we actually taste it, but I'm getting some light grain notes. Maybe a little bit of fruitiness. That's about it, though. Let's give it a try. Wow, that is apples. A lot of apple. Honestly, if I didn't know this was a whiskey, I would almost think that is a brandy. It is very fruity, extremely fruity. It seems like there's maybe a moderate amount of age on this one. I don't think it's too old, though. As fruity as it is, I'm still getting a little bit of grain notes on there. Yeah, that's just very, very fruit forward. There's some grain underneath it, but really the grain kind of comes through on the finish a little bit. But this is apples, pears, most of the way through. It's clearly old enough that you're not getting much in the way of grain, so I would think this is, at least, 6-7 years old, I would guess. You guys will know here in the next few seconds or whenever I put that in what this is. I don't know what this is. Again, clearly it's a whiskey because this is a whiskey advent calendar. Again, if I didn't know better, I would say that this is some kind of an apple brandy because that's what I get sort of immediately on the palate. I guess I'm getting the malted. There's malted barley there too. So this is probably a single malt, I think. But it's definitely an interesting one, and I'll be interested to see what this is. Because there's so much fruit on there. Like it literally to me tastes like some kind of a brandy. And we have finally arrived at the end of our whiskey advent calendar. We are on day 12. feel like we've gotten to read these a little bit better each time I hold them up, so maybe next year you'll be able to read all of them. All right, let's go ahead and pour our sample. Color-wise, I think we're looking at pretty close to the same thing we had yesterday. It's fairly light, but not the lightest we've seen. Not a ton of legs. Get our nose in there. It's another interesting one. So this is a little fruity too, but not nearly like the other one was. On the nose at least. This is more... There's a little bit of spice there. I think this is a younger whiskey. I'm getting a little bit more in the way of grain notes. Yeah, so a little bit fruity, a little bit spiced. Not spicy, but spiced. And a little bit grainy on the nose. Let's see what it tastes like. That is an odd flavor profile. It tastes, for lack of a better term, almost kind of musty. I'm not sure what the right flavor note is to describe that. It's not particularly pleasant, to be honest. I don't particularly like that flavor. It tastes kind of like I don't know. Imagine like old suitcases. It kind of has an old suitcase note on the palate, whatever that means. Ugh, yeah, I don't know. It's I don't like this one. I think maybe this is my least favorite one that we've tried. I can't place it exactly what flavor that is, but it's not. Again, musty is the closest thing. Like think of like old houses, just kind of I don't know, disuse. I don't know if that's a disuse isn't exactly a helpful flavor tasting note, but that's what I'm getting. Like I'm gonna be really interested to see what this is. It doesn't particularly taste. It almost tastes like a flavored whiskey, but like they flavored it with something you wouldn't want to flavor whiskey with. Wow. Yeah, the nose is less pleasant than it was when I first nosed it, and I'm not looking forward to sampling this one again. But for the viewer, I'll give this one more taste. Oh, goodness, that's not something that I care for. Again, kind of musty. It tastes like a basement. Yeasty, maybe just a little bit yeasty. I don't know. I'm having a hard time coming up with the exact way to describe this. Oftentimes, I think for the lay people among us who aren't professional tasters or anything like that, I think that sometimes the best way to describe whiskeys that you taste is less to try to describe the flavors, because I think sometimes the flavors can be very, very subjective, and what tastes like one thing to one person doesn't taste like something to somebody else. So I think maybe just describing what it reminds you of, and this reminds me of cleaning out an old person's basement, and just kind of dusty, musty, and I'm sorry to whoever picked this one. I apologize. It's nothing personal against you. I don't know who picked it. This could be mine, and if it was mine, ooh, I made a bad choice. Because this doesn't taste very good. I'm going to, in the interest of science, do one last little dip on this thing and just see if we can pull anything out of here we like. Ugh. No, it's no. Not pulling anything out of there I like. It tastes like, I guess there's a little bit of fruitiness there, but it's like old fruit, like fruit you wouldn't want to be eating, or like fruit that you would eat if you were trapped in the forest and needed to eat something that you found that was on the ground. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to be so negative on this one, especially since our last pick, but that is very unpleasant. I don't like that at all. I strongly dislike this one. So on that bombshell of a note, we end our Advent calendar on one that I didn't care for, but that's all right. I've liked most of the ones on here, and I think when we get the descriptions down here, you can see the ones that I liked. You can try those. This is something to try. If you see this at a bar, I mean, give it a shot. If you want to, taste something unique. It is unique tasting. I will definitely grade it that. It's not. I don't know what this is. I don't think it's a single malt. In fact, I would be amazed if this is a single malt. This is something that was made with something else. I don't know what it was made with, but we'll find out, and it'll be down below, and we'll go back to me at the bar. All right, and we're back. I apologize for working off notes. I just kind of want to make sure I get a few things out of here. So I'm not doing rankings on these, but I will say my three favorites. The Flaming Heart, I think it's Flaming Heart blended Scotch was my favorite. That was the one that was very hot, very smoky. My other favorite was Bunnahabhain 12-year, which was number 8, and I really liked the Woodsmith Sawatch, which is a single malt. Those are my three favorites. The only one I didn't like was the Westward American malt. I'm not sure what the deal was with that one. I looked it up a little bit. I'm not exactly sure what they do different or what makes it taste the way it tastes, but the distillery is out in Colorado, so I might go out there next time I'm through and check it out. And I just wanted to close out with a couple of notes. So I said that the first day was a young one. It was not. That was a Glenfiddich 15 years, so that was the opposite of a young Scotch. Another interesting one is on day 2, I said that I thought Aran was a Highland. And it's interesting, there's actually some disagreement about that. Apparently Aran considers themselves to be a island distillery, but a lot of other people still consider them to be a Highland distillery, so I guess you could say that's kind of right. And number 3, I was having some trouble with too. That's a blended grain whiskey. So in Scotland we hear single malts all the time, and sometimes we hear blended malts. But this is a blended grain, so they can use different grains. It's just kind of a different thing you don't see as much. Number 60 on that Flaming Heart blended Scotch was my favorite. Mine was number 7. It was a Koval Oat whiskey, and I thought it was just kind of a little insubstantial. Nothing particularly special about it. The Bunnahabhain, I thought that maybe there was colorant added to it, because you can add color to whiskey, to scotches. In this case, there was no color added. It was not finished in anything, and it was also non-chill filtered as well. Oh, and number 9, which was the Woodsmith Sawatch, one I liked a lot. I thought it had smoked or chocolate barley, and it actually had both. That is it was a blend, so that was kind of an interesting one. Number 11 was the Glenmorangine Malaga cask. That's the one that I kind of could have sworn was a brandy. So that was aged in Malaga cask, which is a sweet fortified wine. So that would probably explain where a lot of those fruit notes were coming from. And finally, the number 12, which is such a strange one. And I apologize to the person that picked that one. It just wasn't, I don't know what was going on there. And I thought that it was not a single malt, but it is a single malt. It's an American single malt. So, that being said, I think this was a lot of fun. I liked the majority of all these. Even the ones that I didn't love, I thought were just fine, except for the one caveat. So, yeah, it's been a great holiday season trying these out. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. And have a good drink. And have a good day. right. All 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 right. All